I fell. I hit my head on the corner of the marble step. I tasted blood. For a long second I couldn't move. I just lay there at the bottom of the staircase, looking up at my own daughter's shoes. White heels. Brand new. The kind of shoes she said she couldn't afford last month when she called me crying about the property tax. Above me, somebody laughed. A short, mean little laugh. Then somebody else picked up a wine glass. I heard the clink. Nobody came down the stairs. Nobody asked if I was alive. My name is Howard Bemberton. I'm 63 years old. I built a logistics company in Cleveland from nothing back in 1987, sold the controlling stake quietly in 2014, and kept enough of the holding to live 2 or 3 lifetimes without lifting a finger. My wife, Marlene, died of pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2019. The day after her funeral, I made a decision I have spent the last 6 years regretting, and not regretting in equal measure. I decided my only daughter would never know how much money I actually had, until she earned the right to know. I let her think I drove a delivery route. I let her think the house she grew up in was rented. I let her in-laws think I was some kind of harmless old courier with a bad back and a flip phone. It started as a test. It turned into a 6-year quiet study. And, on the night I'm telling you about, that study finally gave me its answer. Let me back up. My daughter's name is Camille. She's 31. She married a man named Trent 3 years ago. Trent's family is from a suburb outside Cincinnati, the kind of suburb where the lawns are too green and everybody's last name sounds like it belongs on a yacht. Trent's father, a tall man named Sutter, made his money, what was left of it, I came to learn, in commercial real estate. His mother, Felicia, had a face that was always just about to say something cruel, and most of the time did. They had a younger son, too, a kid named Brock who never seemed to work and always seemed to need a new car. When Camille first brought Trent home, I liked him. He was polite. He looked me in the eye. He shook my hand the way my own father shook hands, which is to say firmly and with the slight pressure of a man who wanted to be remembered. I should have known then. Men who want to be remembered are usually the ones who shouldn't be. I wore my old work jacket the day I met his parents. The one with the company logo faded almost off, the cuffs starting to fray. I drove up to their house in the truck I keep for hauling firewood, the dented one with the cracked passenger window I never bothered to fix. Felicia looked at me the way you look at something that crawled out from under a porch. "And what do you do, Mr. Bemberton?" she asked, after she'd already taken in everything she needed to. "Logistics," I said. "Oh," she said with a small, polite smile, like a manager. "More on the roadside," I said. "How nice," she said. That was the moment. That was when I made the decision that would carry me through 6 years and 1 broken collarbone and a hairline fracture in the back of my skull. I decided right there in her foyer that I would never tell these people what I was worth, not a dollar of it. I wanted to know what kind of family my daughter had married into when nobody thought there was money on the table. I found out. The first thing I learned was that Trent's family lived past their means in a way that wasn't even creative. The cars were leased. The house had been remortgaged twice. Sutter had been pushed out of the firm he liked to brag about, and he'd been pushed out a long time before I met him. Felicia had a closet full of designer bags, and an account at every department store, and a credit score that looked like a phone number. They were drowning. They just smelled like cologne while they did it. The second thing I learned was that Camille had started to drown right alongside them. Within the first year of her marriage, my daughter, my only child, the girl I taught to read sitting on the porch in the summer, had stopped calling me on Sundays. The Sunday calls had been our thing since she went off to college. Marlene started them. After Marlene was gone, Camille kept them up out of love for her mother. And then, sometime around the second Christmas with the in-laws, the calls started missing. First one, then 2 in a row. Then a month would go by, and I'd be the one to dial. When she did call, it was always for the same reason. "Dad, the property tax came in higher than we thought." "Dad, Trent's car needs a new transmission. Can you believe it?" "Dad, the school for Brock's tuition." Wait, sorry, I meant Trent's tuition. They made a mistake on the billing. I paid every one of them. Quietly. I'd send a check or a wire, and I'd never bring it up again. I told myself I was helping my daughter. I told myself she'd remember when it counted. What I didn't tell myself, but what I knew anyway, sitting in my kitchen at night with the lights off, was this. Every dollar I sent was going somewhere it shouldn't have been going. The math wasn't right. The numbers she gave me were too round. The property tax, my daughter said, was $8,000 was the property tax for a house that didn't have $8,000 property tax. I knew because I had paid for the house. The house was in Trent's name. He had bought it before they got married, but the down payment, the one his parents bragged about at Easter dinner like they had cut the check themselves, had come out of an account that I had quietly seeded for my daughter when she turned 25. She had told them it was their gift. She had let them believe it, and they had let themselves believe it. Or pretended to. I'm still not sure which is worse. The third thing I learned, and this took the longest, was that my daughter had begun, somewhere along the line, to be ashamed of me. It started small. Trent's parents would host a barbecue and she'd say, "Dad, you don't have to come. It's going to be a lot of Trent's work people." She'd come over for dinner at my place and look around the kitchen, the same kitchen where she ate cereal every morning of her childhood, and say something like, "Have you ever thought about updating in here, Dad? Just a little?" It's so dated. She'd ask if I needed help with money, in a tone that was already half prepared to be disappointed by my answer. I let her think what she wanted to think. Then, about 8 months ago, she stopped letting me come at all. There was a christening for Trent's nephew. I wasn't invited. There was a charity gala Felicia was hosting. I wasn't invited. There was, hardest of all, my own grandson's first birthday party. My grandson, Caleb, the only piece of Marlene I had left in this world, and I wasn't invited. I called Camille the night before the birthday. I said, "Sweetheart, are you sure you don't need help setting up?" She paused for a long time on the phone, long enough that I knew she was choosing her words with somebody else in the room. "Dad," she said, "it's going to be Trent's parents' friends. It's a lot of, business people, bankers and stuff. I just don't want you to feel out of place." I held the phone for a second, out of place at my own grandson's first birthday. "You know what I mean," she said. "I do," I said. "I know exactly what you mean." I hung up. I sat in the kitchen until the sun came up. That night I drove 40 minutes to a baby store and I bought Caleb the biggest stuffed bear they had. I drove it over to the house the next morning before the party started and I left it on the porch with a card. I didn't ring the bell. The card said, "To my grandson on his first year, from Grandpa Howard, who loves you so much it hurts." Camille texted me that night. The text said, "Thanks for the bear, Dad. Caleb loved it." The party was great. She didn't send a photo, so when Camille called me 3 weeks later and told me her in-laws wanted to host a real family dinner, her words, real family, and that she really wanted me to come this time, that I needed to come, that it would mean a lot to Trent, I knew something was up. I had known these people long enough to know that Felicia didn't host dinners for fun. Felicia hosted dinners when she wanted something. "What do they want, sweetheart?" I asked. "Dad, don't be like that. They just want to get to know you better. They've known me for 3 years. It's a fresh start. Please, please come." I went. Of course I went. She was my daughter. The dinner was at Trent's parents' house, the one I had been quietly helping to keep out of foreclosure for the better part of 2 years, through the checks I'd sent Camille, who I now realized had been forwarding most of that money to her in-laws. I drove the truck. I wore the jacket. I brought a bottle of wine that cost $12 at the grocery store, the kind I knew Felicia would set aside without opening. The house, when I got there, was lit up like a magazine ad. Felicia had put out the good china. Sutter was wearing a pocket square. Trent's brother Brock was there, on his 3rd drink before the first course. And there was somebody else too, A woman in her 50s with a clipboard who I was not introduced to. She just sat in the corner of the living room with a cup of coffee and watched. I noticed her. I made a note of her. I want you to remember that. Camille came up to me in the foyer. She kissed my cheek the way you kiss a coworker. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her. Her hair was darker. She was wearing a dress I had never seen before, a tight white dress with a thin gold belt and white heels with the price sticker still half on the bottom of the left one. She was holding Caleb on her hip, my grandson, who saw me and reached out his little hand. Camille turned her body so he couldn't reach. "Dad," she said, "remember, just okay? Just remember where you are. Don't get too into the work stories." "What work stories?" "You know," she said. "Just be a little quiet. It's a fancy dinner. They get like this." I almost left right then. God forgive me, I almost turned around in the foyer and went back to my truck and drove home. But Caleb was looking at me over her shoulder, and he was smiling. He had 2 new teeth on the bottom. So I took a breath, and I followed my daughter into the dining room. Felicia put me at the far end of the table, the end nearest the kitchen. Sutter sat at the head, of course, and Felicia at his right. And then Trent and Camille on one side and Brock on the other, and then way down at the end, like the help, me. Across from me, they had set a place for the woman with the clipboard. She didn't sit. She kept walking around with her coffee cup. I realized after a minute that she was on her phone, taking pictures of the table. Pictures of me, too. She wasn't subtle about it. Sutter raised his glass. "To family," he said. "To real family. The kind that shows up." He looked at me when he said the second part. I raised my glass and didn't drink. Felicia started in on the appetizers. Some kind of seared scallop thing. She turned to me with the smile she always wore when she was about to draw blood. "So, Howard, are you still on the road? Or did they give you a desk, finally?" "Still on the road." "Oh, you must be tired." "I manage. Camille tells us you've been so generous to the kids, helping with little expenses here and there." "That's so sweet, really." My daughter." "Of course." Her smile got tighter. "It's just, well, Sutter and I have been talking, and we feel like at a certain point, we're all family now, and we want to make sure we're being a real family. Including financially." I set my fork down. "Including financially how, Felicia?" Sutter cleared his throat. "Howard, we'll get there. Let's eat." The woman with the clipboard sat down finally. She put a folder next to her plate. I looked at my daughter. Camille was looking at her napkin. She would not raise her eyes. "Dad," she said quietly, "just listen. Okay? Just listen." The main course came. The woman with the clipboard introduced herself finally. Her name was Rihanna. She said she was a family financial advisor, and she had been working with the Wexlins, that was Trent's last name, Wexlin, to do some long-term planning for the next generation. "The next generation," I said. "Caleb," Felicia said brightly, "and any future children, of course." "Of course." Rihanna opened her folder. She had documents in it. She had a lot of documents. "Howard," she said, "we just wanted to use tonight to walk through some opportunities. Camille and Trent have been so wonderful, and you've been such a wonderful grandfather, and we just feel like there are some structural things we can do as a family to really set Caleb up. So if it's all right, I'd like to walk you through what kind of structural things. Well, for example, a generation skipping trust, a life insurance instrument with Caleb as the named beneficiary, funded by you. There are very nice tax advantages. Funded by me. You'd be the policyholder, yes. Premium payments on a 5-year accelerated schedule. We'd also love to discuss adding Trent and Camille as joint trustees on any existing accounts you may have set aside for Caleb, just for, ease of access in case anything were to happen." I looked across the table at my daughter. She was still looking at her napkin. Trent was looking at his wine. Sutter was watching me like a man watching a slot machine he had just put his last quarter into. "In case anything were to happen to who?" I said. "Well, to anyone," Rihanna said quickly. "It's just smart planning." in case anything were to happen to me. Howard, Felicia said with a little warning trill in her voice, let's not be morbid. We're a family. Families plan. How big a policy are we talking, Rihanna? She glanced at Felicia. Felicia gave her a tiny nod. She glanced at Felicia. Felicia gave her a tiny nod. 1.2 million, Rihanna said. On you. Premium accelerated. Caleb is named, and Camille and Trent are listed as the custodial guardians of the policy until he reaches majority. I let that sit on the table. I looked at my daughter again. I waited for her to look up. Camille, I said. Sweetheart, look at me. She didn't. Camille. Dad, please, look at me. She looked up. She had been crying a little, very quietly. The way she used to cry when she was a teenager and she'd done something wrong and was hoping I wouldn't ask. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. There was a piece of her in there I had never seen before. A piece I had been hearing about, over the phone for years, but had never seen in her face until right then. You knew, I said. You knew this was what tonight was for. Dad, you knew. It's not like that. They want what's best for Caleb. We want what's best for Caleb. Funding a $1.2 million life insurance policy on me is what's best for Caleb. It's just paperwork, Dad. It's just numbers. I stood up. I am not a young man. My knees clicked when I stood. I steadied myself on the edge of the table. I'd like to use the bathroom, I said, and then I'm going home. Howard, Felicia said. Don't be dramatic. You don't get to call me dramatic in your own dining room, Felicia. I'm 63 years old. I'm going to use the bathroom. The bathroom on the main floor was occupied. I knew it would be, so I went up the stairs to the second-floor bathroom, the one Trent had pointed out the first time I'd been to the house, 3 years ago, when I was still pretending I'd never been in a house this big before. On the way back down, I stopped at the top of the stairs. The dining room was just visible through the railing. They had pulled their chairs in close. Felicia was talking fast and low. Sutter was nodding. Brianna was writing something down, and my daughter, my Camille, was holding Trent's hand under the table and saying, He's going to do it. He's going to do it. Just give him a minute. He better, Felicia said. After everything we've put up with. That jacket. Did you see that jacket? Brock laughed. He looks like he just got off a UPS truck. He probably did, Trent said. And the truck, Felicia said. Camille, sweetie, please, next time, make him park around the corner. My daughter laughed. She laughed. It was a small laugh. A nervous one. The kind of laugh you make to keep the peace at a table where the peace is bought with somebody else's dignity. But it was a laugh. And it came out of the same throat I used to sing to when she was 3 years old and couldn't sleep. I started down the stairs. I was 3 steps from the top when she came up the stairs the other way, hurrying, hissing my name. Dad, Dad, are you coming down? Dad, hurry up. Don't embarrass me in front of my real parents. That was the phrase. That was the exact phrase. My real parents. I will hear that phrase in my daughter's voice on my deathbed. I stopped on the staircase. I looked at her. She was 3 steps below me, looking up, her face pinched in that nervous, ashamed of her own blood expression I had been seeing in my dreams for 2 years without knowing what it was. Camille, I said, what did you just call them? Dad, please, I didn't mean. What did you just call them? She put her hand on my chest. To turn me, to hurry me, to move me along like I was a slow customer in a checkout line. I don't think she meant for me to fall. I don't think she planned it. I think she just wanted me to keep moving. I think she wanted me out of the way of her real parents and her real life. But I am 63. And the marble was slick. And she pushed. I went backward. My foot found nothing. My head hit the corner of the 3rd step from the bottom. I tasted blood. I lay there. And from the dining room I heard a glass clink. And I heard Brock say, oh, what now? And I heard Felicia say, Sutter, go check, would you? And I heard nobody move. For 4 full minutes, I counted them, lying there, Because I am the kind of man who counts things when he is in pain. For 4 full minutes, no one came down to me. My own daughter walked past me twice. Once to get a fresh glass of wine. Once to take Caleb upstairs to bed. The second time, she stepped over my legs. She didn't even look down. Eventually, Sutter came. He nudged my shoulder with his shoe. He said, "Howard, you all right? You took a tumble there." I sat up. I touched the back of my head. My fingers came back red. "I'm fine," I said. "Want me to call somebody?" "I'll drive myself." "You sure? You hit pretty hard." "I'll drive myself, Sutter." I stood up. I was dizzy. I steadied myself on the banister. Felicia came to the door of the dining room and looked at me with the same face you make at a piece of furniture that's gotten scuffed. "Oh, Howard," she said, "we have a rug guy. Just send us the cleaning bill. There's no blood on the rug, Felicia." Well, just in case. I walked out. I walked past my daughter, who was now back in her seat at the table, sipping her wine, not looking at me. I walked past my grandson's high chair, which was empty. I walked out the front door and I got in my truck. I drove 4 blocks and I pulled over because my hands were shaking too hard to hold the wheel, and I sat in the truck and I cried for about 20 minutes. Not quietly. The big kind of crying. The kind a man does when he realizes the thing he was afraid of for 6 years is not coming. It has already come. Then I stopped. And I called a number I had not called in 2 years. The number belonged to a woman named Adelaide Kresh. Adelaide had been my wife's best friend's daughter. She had also, since 2014, been my estate attorney, my financial trustee, and the only other person in the state of Ohio who knew the actual size of what Marlene and I had built. Adelaide was 47 years old. She was the daughter of 2 school teachers. She had put herself through Case Western on scholarships and night shifts at a diner. When Marlene was dying, Adelaide came every Thursday for 3 months and read to her from books. Marlene loved and never asked me for a dime. After Marlene died, Adelaide had drawn up the structure I lived inside. The trust, the holdings, the layered shells, the dummy address that received my mail under the name H. Bemberton, CAO Cardinal Routing Services, and she had been the keeper of it ever since. She was not just my lawyer, she was my fortress. She picked up on the second ring. She always did. "Howard, I need you to come over tonight." The pause. Just one breath. "Are you safe?" "I'm at home. I'm parked in my driveway. I'm bleeding from the back of my head, and I have a piece of paper to talk to you about." "I'll be there in 40 minutes. "Adelaide." "Yes." "Bring the binder." She didn't ask which one. She knew. She was at my door in 36 minutes. She brought the binder, a roll of medical tape, a bottle of water, and a young paralegal she trusted, a quiet kid named Mateo, who carried a laptop and a digital recorder and didn't say a word for 2 hours. We sat at my kitchen table. The dated one Camille had told me to update, and we worked until 4:11 in the morning. I told Adelaide everything. The dinner. Rihanna. The folder. The $1.2 million policy. The phrase, "my real parents." The push. The stepping over. Adelaide listened without interrupting. She wrote in a yellow legal pad. When I was done, she set down the pen. "Howard," she said, "I need you to understand something, what you're describing. The financial advisor, the policy structure, the named guardians, the staged dinner. That's not an in-law family being tacky. That's a pattern. I know. There's a name for it. I know what it is, Adelaide. Then we're going to do this right. We are not going to do anything tonight that isn't legal and clean and that won't hold up in front of a judge in this county. You understand me?" "Yes." "Good. Then let's start with the trust." She turned to a tab in the binder. For the next 4 hours, Adelaide and I did 3 things. The first thing we did was revoke, completely and irrevocably, the contingent inheritance that had been set up for Camille in the original trust. Marlene and I had drafted that document together in 2018, when we still believed our daughter was the same girl she had been at 16. Under the old document, in the event of my death, Camille would have received a controlled distribution of the holdings over a 10-year period. As of 4:11 a.m., but that morning, under a new instrument signed by me and witnessed and notarized by Mateo, who was a commissioned notary, Camille would receive nothing. Not the house, not the holdings, not the controlling stake, not the cabin in Hocking Hills, not Marlene's wedding ring, which I kept in a velvet box in the top drawer of my dresser. Nothing. The second thing we did was redirect the entire trust to a new beneficiary. The new beneficiary's name was Caleb Bemberton Vexlin, my grandson, 1-year-old, currently being raised, as far as I could tell, by a mother who would step over her own father's bleeding body to refill her wine. But Adelaide warned me, "Howard, if you name Caleb directly with Camille and Trent as custodial guardians, you've done nothing. You've handed them the keys. They'll bleed it dry before the boy's in kindergarten. What's the alternative? Custodial guardian outside the household." I thought for a long minute. Marlene's sister, I said. Joelle. In Asheville. Will she do it? She'll do it. She'll do it. She loved Marlene more than I did, if that's possible. And she has never in 11 years asked me for $1. Call her at 8. I will. The third thing we did was the part I want you to listen to most carefully. The third thing was the part about Trent, because here is what I had not told the dinner table, what I had not told my daughter, what I had not told anyone except Adelaide, and what was sitting in a manila folder in Adelaide's binder under a tab labeled Holdings, Cardinal Routing, Subsidiary 4. Trent worked at a mid-sized commercial real estate firm in downtown Cincinnati called Merrow Bridge and Stake. He had told Camille, and Camille had told me, that he was a junior partner. He was not a junior partner. He was not a junior partner. He was a senior associate. The firm was not doing well. The firm had been bleeding clients for 2 years. In April of the previous year, Merrow Bridge and Stake had been quietly acquired in a stock-only transaction by a holding company called Cardinal Routing Services, LLC. Cardinal Routing Services, LLC was mine. Trent worked for me. He had worked for me, without knowing it, for 19 months. And during those 19 months, my forensic accountant, a man named Boren, who I had retained quietly when Trent's spending patterns first started not adding up, had documented a series of small, careful, clever embezzlements from Merrow Bridge and Stake's escrow accounts. Not enough at any one time to trigger an audit, but over 19 months, $240,000, routed through a vendor account that didn't exist, a vendor account in the name of T. Wexlin Consulting. Boren had given me the file in August. I had been sitting on it. I had been hoping I wouldn't have to use it. I had been hoping my daughter would call me one Sunday, and I'd have a reason to put the file in the shredder. She hadn't called. At 4:11 a.m., I told Adelaide to take the file to the firm's general counsel at 9 a.m. that morning. She took it to him at 8:47. I called Marlene's sister Joelle at 8 out of 1. I told her everything in 12 minutes. She said yes in the 13th. The next 48 hours moved fast. By noon, Trent had been escorted out of his office. By 3 p.m., he had been formally charged. By the end of the week, Brock, who, it turned out, had been the one cashing the vendor checks, had been charged too. Sutter and Felicia hired a lawyer who told them within an hour that they had no standing to fight the trust modifications, no claim on me, and no claim on Caleb. Adelaide also did something quiet and beautiful on her own initiative that I want to tell you about. She filed, on Caleb's behalf as a minor, and through Joelle as his newly designated standby guardian, a formal complaint with the Ohio Department of Insurance regarding the proposed life insurance policy. It turned out, and Adelaide had suspected this from the moment I described Rihanna and her folder, that there had already been an application submitted, in my name, with a forged signature on it, 3 weeks before the dinner. The dinner had not been an opening pitch. The dinner had been a closing one. The policy was already in motion. They had only needed my signature on one final document, and they had been planning, I now understand, to get it from me one way or another that night. with charm if possible, with pressure if not, with other means if necessary. The forged signature carried its own consequences. Rihanna, the woman with the clipboard, surrendered her license within the month and is currently, as of this telling, awaiting sentencing in a county courthouse 2 hours east of here. But none of that is the part I want to end on. The part I want to end on is the morning after. I woke up at 6:14 a.m. in my own bed, with a butterfly bandage on the back of my head and a headache like a hammer. Adelaide had gone home around 5. The house was quiet. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with the cup in my hands, and I did not look at my phone. I did not look at it for a long time. When I finally did look at it, at 9:47 in the morning, there were 66 missed calls. 41 were from my daughter. 12 were from Trent. 8 were from Felicia. The remaining 5 were from Sutter, who had clearly been calling between his attorney visits. There was also one voicemail from Camille. I listened to it once. I've never listened to it again. In the voicemail, my daughter was crying, the kind of crying I used to know from her bedroom door when she was 9 years old and had failed a spelling test. She said, "Dad, please, please call me back. Please." They came and got Trent. They came and got Trent. They came and got Brock. The bank called about Dad. The bank called about everything. The house, the cars. They said the trust. "Dad, what did you do? What did you do? Please call me. Please, please. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry, please." I set the phone down on the table. I did not call her back. I did not call her back that day. I did not call her back that next day. I did not call her back the next week. 3 months later, she sent me a letter, handwritten, in the mail. The letter said she had moved out of the house. The house had been sold. She was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a town I had never heard of, working as a receptionist at a dental practice. Caleb was with Joelle, and she was allowed supervised visits twice a month. She was in counseling. She was, in her own words, trying to figure out who I was before I was somebody's wife. The letter ended with, "I don't expect you to forgive me, Dad. I don't think I have earned that yet, but I want you to know I think about you every day, and I think about Mom, and I think about what kind of person I had become, and I am sorry. I will be sorry for the rest of my life." I read the letter 3 times. I put it in the same drawer where I keep Marlene's ring. I have not written back, not yet, but I did do one thing. In the trust documents Adelaide drew up for Caleb, there is a clause. Adelaide called it a redemption clause. It says that, beginning on Caleb's 18th birthday, and only at his discretion, a portion of the trust may be made available for the support of his mother, contingent on a written application from her, and a sustained, documented record of stable, lawful living. It is not a guarantee. It is not a gift. It is a door, a small one, with a heavy lock. The key is not held by me. The key is held by my grandson. He is 7 years old now. He lives with Joel in Asheville. He calls me Pop. Every Sunday at 6 o'clock in the evening, my phone rings, and it is him, and he tells me about his week. About school. About the dog he is teaching to sit. About a girl in his class named Penny, who he says is his best friend, even though, he tells me very seriously, she does not know this yet. When he is 18, I will tell him about the clause. I will tell him about the door. I will tell him it is his to open, or not. I think he will open it. I think he will be a better man than the men who raised his mother, to be the woman who pushed me down those stairs. I think Marlene, somewhere, is waiting to see, and I think, when he opens it, his mother will walk through it not into the life she thought she was owed, the white heel life, the real parent's life, the life where her father parked around the corner so she wouldn't be embarrassed, but into a smaller, quieter life, the kind of life where you make your own coffee, where you call your father on Sundays, where you don't step over people who are bleeding. The kind of life her mother would have wanted for her. The kind of life I am still, at 63 years old, with a scar at the back of my head and one stuffed bear in my closet that nobody ever mailed back to me, hoping she finds. I fell. I hit my head. But I am still here. and I am still her father. And the door, when she's ready, is still barely open. I lay at the bottom of those marble stairs, and I counted 4 minutes. 4 minutes is a long time when you're bleeding. Long enough to understand exactly how you got there. I did not get there because Camille pushed me. I got there because for 6 years, every time my daughter put out her hand, I put a check in it. I told myself that was love. It was not love. It was the slow, careful work of teaching a grown woman that I was a wallet, and that wallets do not have feelings, and that wallets do not deserve to be looked at when they fall downstairs. You raise a child the way a farmer raises a tree. Whatever you keep watering is what grows. I kept watering her appetite. I never watered her character. By the time she stood 3 steps above me in those white heels, the tree was already what it was going to be. The push was just the fruit. I have learned, late in life, that there are 3 things a man owes himself before he can be of any use to the people he loves. The first is honesty about what he's actually doing when he calls something generous. A lot of what I called generosity was cowardice. I did not want my daughter to be angry with me, so I paid her not to be. The second is the courage to let the people you love feel the cost of their own choices. I robbed Camille of every consequence she ever earned, and in doing so, I robbed her of the only school teacher who could have saved her, which was the world itself. The third is the strength to do the hard thing once you finally see it clearly. Calling Adelaide at 2 a.m. with blood drying in my hair was the first hard thing I had done in 6 years. Everything before that, I had been calling generosity, and it was actually fear. I do not regret what I did the morning after. I regret that it took a marble step to the back of my skull to do it. My grandson Caleb is 7 now. He calls me on Sundays. He tells me about a girl named Penny. I listen, and I hear my own father's voice in my head saying, "You raise them by what you allow, son, not by what you give." I did not understand what he meant when he said it. I understand now. If you are watching this and you have a child you have been afraid to disappoint, I want you to hear me. Love that cost you nothing teaches them nothing. The kindest thing my own father ever did for me was let me fail. The cruelest thing I ever did to my daughter was protect her from every consequence she had earned. The door I left open for her, the small one with the heavy lock, is the first honest thing I have ever given her. I hope one day she walks through it.